On CBS Sports Sunday tomorrow, former champion Art Frias meets aggressive Ruben Munoz and the wild and woolly Calgary Stampede here on CBS Sports Sunday tomorrow. This is CBS.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. High winds early today have left the small northwest Minnesota town of Oakley in shambles. It's been a busy day there of picking up. Several people are homeless tonight after a fire this morning at a North St. Paul apartment building. We'll report on that. The community of Norwood shared its collective grief today over the loss of 2 school teachers killed in an accident earlier this week. And Karen Boris will introduce us to some unique athletes taking part in a very special competition this day. Those stories coming up next on the 6 p.m. report.
The voyage of the Yemkomst, a handmade Norse ship that set sail from Duluth over 2 months ago, is nearing its final port of Norway. Channel 4 reporter Dave Nimmer and photographer Gordy Bartouche are there to cover the ship's arrival. They'll talk with the captain and crew and the wife and children of Robert Ass, whose dream it was to sail to Norway in this Viking ship. A dream come true, the arrival of the Yemkomst in Norway, a Channel 4 special report this week.
Oh, honey, that was a wonderful vacation.
Oh, here we go. The Minnesota Orchestra's Zomerfest.
Okay, a little Strauss.
A little Scrooter there.
Oh, fattening.
Who is this?
I don't know.
Leonard Slatkin.
He tried to sell us insurance.
Looks
that
like
was
somebody. Well, the Beethoven was wonderful.
The waltzes.
Oh, that's Slatkin there. No, that's not
honey.
him. There is Leonard Slatkin.
He is such a nice man.
Have you called for tickets this year? Be sure
I'm
to
gonna
call now.
I will.
Good.
What is this?
The end of the commercial. Ah, that's better. Zomerfest. Good food and drink.
Oh, and good Viennese music.
WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
From WCCO Television, the Northwest's leading news station, this is the 6 p.m. report.
Good evening, everyone. A stormy night gave way to a busy day today in the small Red Lake County town of Oakley, Minnesota. Early this morning, tornado-force winds whipped through that city, toppling trees and damaging a lot of buildings. Today, residents of the northwest Minnesota town were busy cleaning up and assessing the damages. Jim Newman reports.
About 15 people were left homeless as the high winds, reaching perhaps 80 miles per hour, raced through a trailer court. With no advance warning, 5 mobile homes were smashed to bits. 4 of them were occupied at the time. Galen Halverson's mobile home, lifted from its foundation, landed on top of the neighboring trailer. He, his wife, and baby were in bed when the winds hit. They survived the ordeal with nothing worse than cuts and bruises. A block away, the Roisland family had just arrived home when their trailer rolled on its side and then on its top. Linda Roisland is okay now, but last night left her with some terrifying memories.
The whole trailer kind of shook, then it went over.
How long did that take?
About 10 minutes. Because the whole works was done in about 10 minutes. It's really scary.
Elsewhere in this town of some 500 people, Oakley residents were cleaning away the scattered debris. Some houses lost shingles and parts of roofs. A downtown building was splintered to nothing. The town's grain silos were crushed. And 40 to 50 trees were destroyed and had to be cleared away. The collected trash from ruined buildings and trees was piled at the edge of town and will be burned later. About 250 people took part in the cleanup.
They've all just kind of more or less pitched in, and everybody just help and go.
Townsfolk were relieved that while some residents were knocked around by the wind, no one was seriously injured. With photographer Bob Fishnick, Jim Newman, WCCO Television News, Oakley, Minnesota.
A fire this morning in North St. Paul sent 3 people to the hospital and caused extensive damage to an apartment in the Skillman Terrace complex. It took firefighters only 20 minutes to knock down the blaze, but the smoke proved to be too much for 3 residents of the building. 23-year-old Vicki Copeland, 3-year-old Angela Copeland, and 17-year-old Chris Anderson were treated for smoke inhalation and then released from the St. Paul Ramsey Medical Center. Authorities say the fire began in the bedroom of a 3rd-floor apartment. Their investigation into the exact cause of that fire is continuing tonight. Most residents of the building expected to return to their homes later this evening. Police in Brooklyn Center are looking tonight for suspects in connection with a shooting spree early this morning, which left 1 woman dead. It was about 1 a.m. when police were called to 5309 Bryant Avenue North. 34-year-old Randy Peterson had been shot and killed while standing in her home. Police say the shots were fired from a passing car. Authorities are investigating whether the same gun that killed Peterson could have been involved in a string of shooting incidents this morning, ranging from Brooklyn Center over to Brooklyn Park. At around 1:15 this morning, shots were reported at 55th and Lindale Avenue North. No injuries there. Then at 1:30, more shots fired at 67th and Bryant Avenue North. Again, no one hurt there. And finally, police in Brooklyn Park reported car windows shot out near 84th and Adair Avenue North. Police are saying the incidents in both suburbs may be related. Thanks to a lucky break and an alert officer, St. Paul police have located a suspect in an attempted murder case. It happened this week at the Cook County Jail in Chicago. St. Paul Sergeant Robert Paskett was there investigating rumors that a Chicago street gang might be operating in St. Paul. Well, while he was at the jail, Paskett spotted 19-year-old Tyrone Banks as he was being booked on another charge. St. Paul police had been searching for Banks since April 19th. That's when art dealer Richard Preuss was shot during an attempted robbery. Another suspect in that case has already been arrested. Tyrone Banks is expected to fight extradition back to Minnesota. An official with Hennepin County is under investigation and could be fired for allegedly stealing drugs, which he later used to try to kill himself. Gerard Copeland, an investigator with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, has been accused of stealing Valium tablets from that office and then covering up the drug's disappearance by falsifying some records. Copeland was suspended after the suicide attempt. He is currently undergoing psychiatric care. State Hearing Examiner Richard Lewis has recommended that Copeland be fired because that theft goes directly against an order issued by Copeland himself only last October. The hearing examiner's recommendation will be reviewed on July 27th. Today in Norwood, Minnesota, the friends, the students, the colleagues of two district teachers gathered to pay their last respects. The pair, 31-year-old Charles Halliday and 28-year-old Mike Steinbrecher, were electrocuted Wednesday night while painting a farm. They were moving a ladder that came into contact with a 7,200-volt power line. Both men had been active in the Norwood Young America School District. Both men had wives who teach in the district, and both men left behind small children. The 250 people who attended today's services were reminded of the men's long dedication to the community before the accident that claimed their lives this week.
If you are between jobs, without health insurance, or have put off medical care because you just can't afford it, Cedar Riverside People Center has got what you're looking for: good, low-cost medical care. The People's Center Clinic offers a full range of services, convenient evening hours, and most visits cost from $5 to $15. So next time you need good, low-cost medical care, try the Cedar Riverside People Center. For an appointment, call 332-4973.
The Hjemkomst, the Viking ship that sailed from Duluth on May 11th, arrived at noon today in a fjord only 15 miles south of its final destination, Bergen, Norway. All dozen crew members reported to be looking healthy, and the ship appeared to be in perfect shape. Tomorrow, the crew plans to rest in preparation for Monday's official celebration. Our Dave Nimmer is in Bergen, and he'll have a complete report on the ship's arrival tomorrow on the 5:30 p.m. report. As the war in Lebanon continues, the threat of terrorism spreads not only in the Middle East, but really throughout the world. That assessment today from Minnesota Senator Rudy Boschwitz, who met with reporters in Minneapolis. Boschwitz saying the PLO began as a peaceful political group, but has recently supported terrorism worldwide. The senator supports President Reagan's offering of American troops to Lebanon, but he hopes the troops will not be needed. St. Paul Mayor George Latimer, whose ancestors came from Beirut, also spoke out against the PLO today.
It reflects a deeply felt, worldwide shared sense of people from Palestine, of Arab nationalism, a need to have a place, a need to have the kind of nationhood, homeland, that in fact we fought for so long for ourselves and for the Israelis.
Since 1975, more than 100,000 Lebanese citizens have been killed in the war. The list of hazardous waste sites in Minnesota has grown 2 names longer. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency says it plans to investigate an old dump site in Maple Plain and look into contamination around the former Interlake Iron Company in Duluth. They're among 51 sites in the state considered to pose a real or potential threat to public health and to the environment. The PCA also reports now that a landfill in Lake Elmo has contaminated 5 wells. Contaminants found in 5 of 10 shallow wells near the former Washington County landfill. 4 people from the Twin Cities area are reported in stable condition tonight following a plane crash near Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. The 4 were in a plane that went down during an aborted landing on Washington Island last night. Pilot Bruce Herrick of Chanhassen told the authorities there that he realized he couldn't land on the small airstrip, but that when he tried to regain the altitude, the plane stalled. Also injured in that crash were passengers Karen Opgenorth of Chanhassen, Reno Finstrom of Minneapolis, and Ann Malone of Edina. High winds literally blew a camper off the road near Evansville, Minnesota today, injuring 2 people. Authorities say that camper, which was bolted and chained to a pickup truck, was torn loose by the wind gusts at about 1:30 this morning. 2 people inside that camper were taken to a hospital in Alexandria and treated for minor injuries. Their names have not been released. Another census is underway in the state of Minnesota, but this time the surveyors aren't counting heads, they're counting fins. The State Department of Natural Resources wants to get a better idea of how many and what kinds of fish swim around in Lake Minnetonka. That information to be used in determining how to best manage the lake. More now from Barb Brown.
It can be easy to take the good fishing on area lakes for granted, but the 7-county Twin Cities metro area has 200 fishing lakes, probably more than any urban area in the country. And if the DNR doesn't keep an eye on the fish populations in those lakes, things can change.
Without us doing this kind of an assessment, we're guessing. And it's entirely possible that things could change without anybody knowing. We could see the loss of fish habitat from one kind of fish or another, perhaps spawning marshes for northern pike.
It takes the whole summer to survey Lake Minnetonka. This cruise started in June, will finish in early September. They set different kinds of nets to catch the various species. When they haul the nets in, they sort the fish, measure and weigh them, and sometimes take scale samples. The same nets are used for each survey at the same location at the same time during the summer to eliminate as many variables as possible. From their data, DNR officials can determine average fish size, numbers, whether stocking programs have worked, where new stocking could be started. Scale samples reveal age and growth rate. Some species give clues as to water quality.
Some bullheads are indicators of good water quality, some are indicators of poor water quality. If we would see a marked change in the numbers of one or another, we might have an indication that there's been a change in water quality.
Results of this year's study won't be in for months. So far, the only noticeable change in fish populations is a welcome one to walleye fishermen, an increase in walleyes, an indication stocking programs are working. With photographer Bill Kemplin, Barb Brown, WCCO Television News, Lake Minnetonka.
One of the Aquatennial's biggest events stepped off today in downtown Minneapolis. It was, of course, the Grand Day Parade, featuring dozens of floats, marching bands, and special units. The 2-hour event made its way from Parade Stadium to Marquette and 6th Street, past some very crowded curbsides. As always, the spectacle attracting thousands of folks to the downtown Minneapolis area. There were a number of colorful floats and over 30 marching bands to provide some music for the festivities. We'll be marching on to the weather and get the complete forecast from Chuck Wise in just a moment.
Over 1 million people have replaced their brakes at Midas. And that's no accident.
Saturday evening at 11, Channel 4 presents The Guns of Navarone, starring Gregory Peck and David Niven.
I don't care about the war anymore. I care about Roy.
And if Turkey comes into the war on the wrong side?
So what? Let the whole bloody world come in and blow itself to pieces. That's what it deserves.
And what about the 2,000 men on Keros?
I don't know the men on Keros, but I do know the men on Navarone.
The Academy Award-winning The Guns of Navarone, Saturday night at 11 on Channel 4.
Here in Minnesota, tractor pulls are a tradition. But in Mayer, Minnesota, that tradition was changed a little bit today. 300 men and women from Carver County participated today in a people pull. That's right. 17 teams of brutish strength, weighing no more than 1,500 pounds each, pulled a 2.5-ton tractor for one block. Of course, some pulled harder than others. Today's premier team was Bulla Ranch, which yanked its way to the finish line in a mere 34 seconds. And on a day like this, even though it wasn't that warm, a fella could work up a sweat.
Well, you know, it was warm out today, Mike. The high in Minneapolis so far was 86 degrees, but it didn't feel like it because we lost 25 degrees of dew point, and that's what I'm going to start out by showing you. You know, we talk about relative humidity, the amount of moisture in the air. Well, we've always said it's not really a good indicator of exactly how moist we are. When you want to look at that, you have to look at the dew point because relative humidity is well, it's relative to temperature. It varies with that, and it's not a good indication when it's hot of really how humid it is. Well, yesterday we had those 70-degree dew points all through most of Minnesota. We had a cold front come through us early this morning, and that's pulling cold, dry air, or cool, dry air, I should say, in from the northwest. It's lowered our dew point a good 20 degrees. That means there's much less water vapor in the air right now. That's making it much more livable. It'll be a beautiful night to sleep, or for sleeping tonight. And it looks like we have some nice weather coming up tomorrow. It's going to stay warm, but drier, much more comfortable, much more typical of what we see around here this time of the year.
Great.
There's our high, 86 degrees. Last night's low, I'm not sure if 78 was the actual low or not. It could have been. We didn't drop much below 80 degrees. And the sun will rise tomorrow morning at 5:42, sunset tomorrow night at 8:56. Presently in the Twin Cities, our temperature now down to 83 as we go into the early evening period. And relative humidity, of course, as we said, has been low for the last couple of days, but of course it's not really that good of an indication of how much moisture is in the air. And area temperatures around the five-state area right now are showing that readings are mostly in the 70s and 80s, as you saw. They're the coolest weather to the northwest of us. Lows this morning in the WeatherNet cities, or WeatherNet areas around our city, that is, mostly in the 70s. You can see the warmest spots to the southwest of us. Owatonna in there was 78 degrees. That was, or matched the airport's low temperature. 62 degrees to the north of us at Sandstone. They had some showers and thunderstorms in that area last night. That activity continued to move off to the east, and in fact, a part of that is what triggered the severe weather in the northwest part of our state. You can see also by the national low temperatures this morning that 70-degree air still extended up to at least to the eastern third of our state, but back to the northwest of us, there's some cooler air. The drier air was, well, just on the verge of moving into our area, because at the time the low temperatures were turned in this morning, that cold front, which affected us at least earlier today, was just beginning to come into our area, and the cooler air back here in the Rockies, which is significantly drier, finally filtering in out of the Dakotas into our area. Early this morning, you can see the showers and thunderstorms moving on out to the east of us. Most of the heavy activity, though, occurred way up to the northwest part of the state. Not much really came through the Twin Cities, and the live radar picture right now still not showing any activity directly over us or to the west. Most of the activity remains to the south, and for at least the evening and a part of tomorrow, that's where it's going to stay. Our satellite sequence also tends to confirm that. You can see the very thin line of clouds left from that front as it continues to move out to the east, but the heavier clouds in the loop appear in much of western or central and east Wisconsin. That's where the heavier thunderstorms were late this afternoon, also affecting parts of Michigan. To the north here, you can see a spiraling mass of clouds associated with the low pressure that triggered those thunderstorms last night, but that's going to stay to the north as well, as we're looking at high pressure, a large pool of that right in the Dakotas right now, which will eventually filter its way into our area during the daytime tomorrow. Our weather map right now is showing that that front continues to move on out to the southeast. It's moving through much of central and eastern Wisconsin. Thunderstorms late this afternoon breaking out all along that front as the Gulf moisture continues to feed northward. And of course, that's colliding with the cooler northwesterly flow, which we now have coming into our area. But the high pressure, as I said, will continue to build in over us during the next 24 hours, and that should shunt any disturbances approaching us in the westerly wind flow, mainly to our north during the next 24 to 36 hours. Sometime later tomorrow, we may see a weak disturbance for a shower or two tomorrow night, but that's about all we'd expect. In general, that high pressure looks like it'll hold for the next couple of days. Our midday, or correction, our forecast map for tomorrow indicates that as well, as we'll see high pressure to our north of us, sunshine over us, some showers out in the Dakotas and also to our south. Midday weather tomorrow will also show fair skies over much of Minnesota, the clouds out to the west and also to our south, but that shouldn't have much effect on us before at least sunset tomorrow night. Mostly clear, cooler, and much less humid tonight. 62 degrees will be the low temperature. Northwest winds continuing to bring the dry air in at 5 to 15 miles an hour. Tomorrow we're going to say mostly sunny and warm, but still not feeling very humid with the light winds. The winds tomorrow should be actually light and variable. High tomorrow, 87 degrees. And our extended outlook keeps the nice weather at least into the mid to latter part of the week. Next week, temperatures also seasonable. Mike will have, or seasonal, I should say, highs 80 to 85, lows 58 to 63, and I can say with confidence that at least the first 2 days of next week should also stay dry before we pick up any additional humidity.
Good for the Aquatennial.
It is.
All right, thank you very much, Chuck. A fan of the Minnesota Vikings says he's been dealt an affront that he won't take sitting down. The fan doesn't like his seat assignment in the new Metrodome. He's taken out a classified ad in tomorrow's Minneapolis Tribune asking other disgruntled fans to get in touch with him by telephone. The Vikings say long-standing ticket holders are getting better seats in the larger stadium and that they generally will sit closer to the gridiron.
Yeah, a whole 100 feet. When you're down at the end of the goal line, who the hell cares? You know? It's not going to do me any good. That may be their argument. I presume it is. But it certainly doesn't cut any ice with me.
Sterling says he's considering a class action suit against the football team. He says he's sure hundreds of fans are angry at the loss of the old Met Stadium, angry at the loss of tailgating, and angry with their new seats. They're just plain mad. It is not unusual at all for someone promoting a race to bring in a big-name runner to attract some attention. It is unusual, however, for race organizers to bring in wheelchair athletes. But that's exactly what happened today in Bloomington, where the best of the wheelchair athletes gathered. Karen Boris has that story.
This is a story about racing and what makes people want to race, even though the odds seem to be against them.
This chair might weigh 20 pounds, where a regular chair that you see people in might weigh 45 pounds or 50 pounds. So we've cut everything off. No brakes, no high back. The foot plates are much different. It's a totally different type chair.
Sharon Limpert won Boston in 1980. Not bad for an athlete who stayed out of high school sports because back then it wasn't proper for girls to sweat. 12 years ago, an automobile accident changed her life. 5 years later, for the first time in her life, Sharon got involved in athletics. Today, she rolled across the finish in a 5K race at 19:53.
That could be a PR for me for a 5K, but the course was perfect, and the crowds were perfect out here. They came out and yelled, and Bloomington folks were nice, too.
How do you feel?
Exhilarated. Exhilarating. Feel great.
The language of the race is the same. Some run, some push. Everyone complains about the heat. Unlike Sharon, Jim Knob was an athlete before his motorcycle accident. That's Jim in the white just taking the lead.
I expected to be at the lead at the top of the hill, and there's a couple guys with me, so I waited about 100 more yards to see how everybody was looking, and I tried to make a break, but then they caught me again. And about halfway down that next straightaway, I said if there's any time to go, it's got to be now, because there's so much strategy in drafting and waiting to see what other people are doing. And my race is basically just getting out front and going.
In 1976, Jim was a finalist for the U.S. Olympic team in pole vaulting. This year, he won at Boston. He is a lifelong athlete, but his motivation and his goals have changed. Jim pushes, for himself to be sure, but also because the sight of all of them racing might motivate someone else in a chair. Their sport is young. It needs participants. Jim says he pushes himself more now than he did as a pole vaulter, that there is more pain, but that pain and push are commodities that make the difference between an athlete and a patient.
We're starting to come on our own now, and, you know, not no pun intended, but standing on our own 2 feet is a sport, and basically I think that's because there's more and more athletes being involved. We're starting to show that we're athletes and we're training and we're committed and dedicated to this sport, and our other goals are clear, just trying to motivate people and show them that they can reach their full potential, not only as athletes, but as human beings.
With photographer Judd Williams, Karen Boris, WCCO Television News, Bloomington.
And for the record, Jim Knob won the 10K race with a time of 28 minutes and 24 seconds. Candace Cable came in first in the wheeling women's division with 34:55. For a while, it looked like Bobby Clampett was sure to wrap up the British Open, but today he began to falter a bit. Ralph John Fritz with that story in just a moment.
Fear of the police using deadly force is rampant.
I feel that if we want to have a civilized society, we have a responsibility to back our police force.
She's married to a police officer, and she thinks they're getting a raw deal.
The vast majority of officers just don't enjoy their gun in the course of their career.
I pity the policeman. We use all the discretion we can.
A police officer, when should he draw his revolver? Making that decision, shoot or not to shoot.
Going to be down to the wire, it appears now.
In the British Open, we'll see if Lee Trevino put the hex on Bobby Clampett yesterday at the halfway point. You recall Clampett was leading by 5, and Lee Trevino says, I've seen this man play. He will not choke. He will win it all. So it's down to a 1-shot lead now, an indication of how tough the old Troon golf course is. Clampett struggled to a 78 today, yet he still holds a 1-shot lead heading into the final round of the British Open, which is tomorrow. The weather cleared a bit over the Scottish course, but Clampett's game, well, it fell apart. He missed this putt for par. The Californian had 5 bogeys and 1 triple bogey and is still leading. His playing partner Nick Price here began his charge on the 10th. A birdie there. The 22-year-old Clampett is gunning to become the youngest British Open winner in 89 years, but he had his problems today, like this shot, a drive into the rough that led to yet another bogey. Meanwhile, Tom Watson is still in striking range. He almost holed this chip on 16. Watson finished at 2 over 74, just 3 shots back of the leader. Britain Sandy Lyle also birdied 16 with a fine putt here. Lyle just 2 shots back of Clampett. However, Nick Price is really the surprise of this Open. He came here hoping to finish in the top 15, but he finds himself just 1 shot back, and it could have been worse. He drove into the rough here on 18, but after a fine chip, Price sank a 20-foot putt for par to keep the pressure on Clampett. The leaderboard, Clampett leading Price by 1. Lyle and Smythe are 2 back. Tom Watson is still in striking range, as we said, 3 out. Kuramoto of Japan and Peter Oosterhuis are at 1 under. Here's how the other Americans fared. Fuzzy Zeller and Tom Pertzer are at 1 over. Jack Nicklaus at +3, and Arnold Palmer is 11 shots back of the leader. Locally, it's the big annual Tape Mark Charity Golf Weekend at Southview Country Club in West St. Paul and at Indian Hills in Stillwater. This action at Southview with Bill Silbernagel of Minneapolis Golf Club in a foursome with Channel 4's Hal Scott. It was the goal of everyone in that group to shoot a lower score than today's temperature, around 90. Jim Terry of Scott Tees was the first day leader at 4 under. We still have no score on Jim, but John Chafee of Austin is the leader with 6 under after 2 rounds. A 2-shot lead over Steve Higginson of Wayzata, while George Shortridge of Greenhaven, Joe Stansbury of Minnesota Valley are 4 shots back. A winner gets $2,000 if he shoots better than the record, which is 10 under for the tournament. He wins $5,000. The 11th annual Tape Mark, it's raised over almost $750,000 for retarded citizens and children with learning disabilities over the years. Ladies Tour in the Mayflower Classic, Sally Little and Sandra Haney share the lead there, 9 under par after 3 rounds. The Twins will escape the oppressive heat of a July afternoon, but it will still be a cooker at the Dome tonight when Detroit and the Twins collide. The Tigers won the first 2 games of the series, 18-2 and 6-3. This afternoon, Rick Miller's bases-loaded triple broke a 2-all tie with Kansas City. The Red Sox go on to win 8-4 in Fenway Park. This was Kansas City's 7th straight loss. Hal McRae smacked a solo home run in the 9th here, upping his Major League leading RBI total to 81, but it was too little, too late. Elsewhere in the American League, Toronto, an 11-3 win, scoring 7 runs in the 2nd inning. Cleveland snapped the Angels' 6-game winning streak. Doug Corbett, the former Twin, took the loss. He's now 1-8. Meanwhile, at Wrigley Field, the Braves bombed the Cubs 9-4. Glenn Hubbard knocked in a pair with a triple here. Chris Chambliss and Dale Murphy also picked up a couple of RBIs. One other game in the National League. This afternoon, the Cardinals 4-2 over Cincinnati. And unbelievably, it was the longest professional fight Davey Moore has ever been in. In Atlantic City this afternoon, Moore retained his WBA junior middleweight title with a 10th round TKO over Ayub Kalouli. Moore had never gone past the 7th, but instead of tiring, he appeared to get stronger as the bout continued, and he won it. Aquatennial sports today included some wild jet ski action on Lake Marion and Lakeville, the state jet ski championships. Winner of the Stock 550 class was Brian Bennix of Sacramento, California. He's a local driver. Rick Cullen of Carver, Minnesota was 4th in that class. Top qualifier, all events. Easy to see why. It's Larry Rippenkroger of Sacramento, California, 82 national points leader. He can do just about everything except stand the jet ski on its end. Come to think of it, he can even do that. The jet ski competition is the newest water sport in the Aquatennial, and they will be competing at Lake Marion again tomorrow.
That looks like a lot of fun.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
So get out there at Lakeville.
Doug Corbett, 1-8.
1-8. Calvin knows what he's doing when he gets rid of these players, doesn't he?
I know.
We've said it all along.
Hanneman got me last weekend. I said, well, we shouldn't criticize the Twins so much. And he said, I haven't criticized the Twins, but you have. Take it all back. That'll do it for tonight's edition of the 6 p.m. Report. We hope you'll join us again tonight at 10, and have a good evening.
On now. now Schmidt's colossal warehouse sale. More new and used pianos and organs than ever before, including Kimball and other fine names. Schmidt's Brooklyn Center Warehouse. See your paper for details.
The coveted Hubert H. Humphrey Distinguished Service Award, presented to Congressman Arlen Erdahl for outstanding congressional leadership on behalf of rehabilitation programs. Congressman Arlen Erdahl, part of a long Minnesota tradition of service in Washington and at home. Re-elect Arlen Erdahl to Congress. He shares our concerns. He makes our voice heard in Washington.
Knife, chisel, jackhammer.
Jackhammer?
Getting rid of hard water deposits is a tough operation.
Wait. Use Lime-Away.
Another cleanser? We've tried all kinds.
But Lime-Away was developed specifically to cut through and remove the lime, scale, and rust deposits left by hard water.
Hey, it wipes right off.
Hard water deposits? Don't scrub all day. Use Lime-Away.
Welcome to the Minneapolis Aquatennial.
For 10 years, Memorex has been demonstrating how a voice on tape can break a glass. We tried it, and it didn't work. Well, we promised that next time we would go right to Memorex and let them prove it can be done. Well, that next time is now, right here on Fight Back. Hello, I'm David Horowitz. Glad you could all be with us. Now, you may remember that on an earlier edition of Fight Back, we challenged the Memorex commercial. You know, the one where they show a glass being shattered by a voice on a Memorex tape? Memorex has been running those commercials for over 10 years, and they use several singers to demonstrate their slogan. Is it live or is it Memorex? The commercial that we challenged featured a Chicago rock band. Let's take a look at that commercial.
Can't let go, can't get enough.
That an amplified human voice could shatter a glass is remarkable. That a cassette recording of that voice can shatter a glass is amazing. But after 1,000 plays, can the same cassette still shatter a glass? It can if it's totally new Memorex.
Okay, that was the commercial that inspired the original Fight Back challenge. To refresh everyone's memory, let's take a look at our original commercial challenge.
Can't let go, can't get enough. I got to have you. I need your love.
Nothing. Well, as you saw, our challenge showed that Memorex failed. But Memorex fought back. They invited us to their tightly secured lab in an effort to prove that it can be done. It was very exciting, and we'll show you what happened later in the show. And we'll be right back as we fight back.
Sometimes when you least expect it, an uncontrollable urge may come over you.
Lobster.
And when that happens, there's just one thing to do. Red Lobster for live Maine lobster. Just the way you like it. One juicy bite and you know you found something special.
'Cause we're seafood lovers too.
Now, about that craving for dessert.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
Small businesses are crucial to Minnesota's economy, but they're being squeezed by high interest rates and high energy costs. Mark Dayton knows that because he's been meeting with small businessmen throughout our state to hear their problems firsthand. Listen.
We've already lost one automobile dealer in our town as a result of the lack of any business.
And we're losing money, and the pork raisers are losing money, and the turkey farmers have had a terrible year.
People do not have the money to spend in the market to pay for our product.
Between the energy costs and the high interest rates, nobody's building anything, so we end up without any jobs.
I don't think the government is showing much concern to the small businessman.
Minnesota's small businesses need help from Washington. Listen to Mark Dayton.
I think we need to target tax incentives at small business because it's small businesses that provide additional jobs. That's why I think we need to bring down interest rates, to put a ceiling on energy costs, to provide an economic future for the state of Minnesota.
And now, another story from our good old consumer horror file. It starts with this pre-selected letter from Robert Stark of Charleston, West Virginia. And here's what he says. I'm concerned regarding cruises offered by Royal Hawaiian Cruises, Inc., operating the TSS Monterey from San Pedro to Hawaii. We have paid in advance a $1,000 deposit, and there are rumors that the company is having money problems. There seems to be so many companies that are not responsible, and we are worried. Any help you can give us will be appreciated. Well, this letter sparked a fight-back investigation, and what we found out should cause future ocean travelers some real concern. Watch. An ocean cruise has always been a romantic dream to many of us. And ever since the TV show The Love Boat went on the air, the cruise business has been on a steady climb. After all, what could be better than those romantic nights aboard ship? The food, the entertainment, the thrill of faraway places. But sailor beware. It isn't always what it's cracked up to be, and it will pay you to do some very careful checking before you sail. We did some checking of our own and found that the TSS Monterey, the ship on which our viewer Robert Stark put a $1,000 deposit in advance to sail on, never sailed and is sitting rusting away at a San Francisco dock.
Their sailing schedule was has been changed a number of times. So far, there have been no sailings. The original sailing was scheduled for somewhere in 1980, and then there was a sailing schedule for 81 as well, and even into 82, but so far there have been no sailings at all.
Have a lot of people put money down on this cruise?
I understand there have been a number that have put the sizable deposits and final payments down.
Did they ever get their money back?
Some have, and some have not.
Yes, TSS Monterey never sailed. But our viewer, Robert Stark, was one of the lucky ones. His travel agent took the loss and refunded his money. I asked George Morello if he knew of any other horror stories.
Well, in the particular case of one vessel called the Aquamarine, she had a very exciting itinerary that included mainland China. This vessel was based in Hong Kong. The sales force was in San Francisco, and they merchandised the product through travel agents throughout the country and operated for quite some time. And without warning, on one bright day, they found out that the ship had been confiscated by its creditors. The result was that the passengers who had planned to sail and those in the future who had made deposits and final payments were simply victimized. There was nowhere for the people to go. They simply had to grin and bear it.
According to California and Florida Consumer Affairs Departments, the states from where most cruise ships leave, cruise ship problems are the most common travel complaints. It's the only form of transportation where foreign travel lines are not regulated by the U.S. government. One cruise broke down an hour and 20 minutes out of port, and only about half the passengers got a full refund. Right on the back of their ticket, in small print, was this notice. Should the voyage of the vessel be interrupted after the ship's sailing due to force majeures or fortuitous events or strikes or other causes not imputable to carrier's fault, the voyage can be deemed completed in all respects, and the passenger will be entitled to neither any refund of the passage money or reimbursement of expenses of any kind whatsoever. What does this mean? We asked Ron Lord, General Manager, Pacific Cruise Conference Association.
Once it started, if the ship cannot for some reason complete the voyage, they are not responsible to refund any money. Most cruise companies today will make restitution in some way or another. Let's face it, our industry is one in which we have something like an 80% repeat factor. We have passengers who go on cruises and book the next year's cruise while they're still on the ship. So it is not to the betterment of a cruise company to alienate anybody on board. If indeed the interruption is out of our control, then it's out of our control. I will admit that some cruise companies are better in restitution than others, but indeed, if they read that exclusion clause, actually none of them have to do anything about refunding money.
Okay, how do you fight back? Well, first make your travel agent make sure that your ship is bonded and that they will return your money if your voyage is not completed. All ships that sail from U.S. ports must be bonded, but there is no such regulation for foreign vessels that sail from other ports. Second, read all the small print on your ticket and make sure you have a reliable travel agent who will guarantee you your money back if the cruise line does not deliver what they promised. Now, most cruise lines are very responsible, and like Ron Lord said, depend on repeat business in order to get more people. They cannot afford to not satisfy, or they will go out of business. But like I said before,